feel like Church of the Subgenius does it the best, and then before that, Principia Discordia. I feel like Pastafarianism insists upon itself. I find it pedantic. So do you think the Chinese came up with pasta, or do you think that the Italians came up with it and the Chinese just mastered it and then gave it back to them, or vice versa? Like, what was your take on that? Rice noodles make sense to me, but where like wheat noodles, I'm fairly certain not really a Chinese thing, right? Yeah. Is it spite? Is it spite, or is it? I think the PRC is just it's just salt on their part. It's just like nah, bro. The way I kind of think of it is not just independent discovery, but like do you know? Are you familiar with what happened with Sega and the localization of the Sonic the Hedgehog and how Sega of America took a bunch of liberties with? Uh, yeah, so originally Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic franchise, his name was Eggman. Sega of America just came up out of thin air with a bunch of like lore that they put in the instruction booklet and ended up with like signing a deal off because they had the rights to do this. They signed a deal with like Archie Comics and such. The and they just gave him this random backstory about having the name Robotnik, Doctor Robotnik, that he was like obsessed with robotics, and it became so entrenched with the character's, I guess, identity in America that Sega of Japan decided to just roll with it. So it's then it gets weirder when you realize there's like a bunch of esoteric Christian themes embedded in Sonic, like the wings and the ring in Sonic the Hedgehog are actually references to esoteric Christianity and its angels, the wheel inside the wheel, and it uh, converged again uh, when the Roman Catholic Church evolved out of the fall of the Roman Empire. And then there's that Protestant Reformation and that Martin Luther started. That was around the time like the Rosicrucians supposedly emerged, and a lot of esoteric Christian origins and Christian alchemy and such. Then alchemy makes use of that with the red and blue coloring, representing like negative and positive charging, electromagnetic, like magnetism. So, which I think actually is represented with Sonic and Knuckles. So Knuckles is kind of like the opposite charge of Sonic in a sense, like the old school games. And it's also prominent in anime. You can't stop seeing Rosicrucian and esoteric Christian references in anime. Another reason why I'm like in favor of shaming Evangelion fans in favor of um, Gurren Lagann chauvinism. Evangelion is like it's a bunch of esoteric Christian Rosicrucian symbolism, so which is an appropriation of alchemy, um, general esoteric Christianity, appropriation of masonry, and uh, syncretizes Hinduism and Islam into it as well. That's the messed up part of it. Sometimes I wonder if like people who are familiar with the esoteric stuff that we were talking about don't go out of their way to mess with Christian. to screw with him and put ideas in his head about multiverses. Like that there's like because he's going on about stuff about how there's like infinite universes. Like he didn't. I know that that's like a popular thing in sci-fi, and he could have picked it up from anywhere. But some of the stuff he says seems so close to what they believe and the things that he's obsessed with. It makes me think that they're like going out of their way to talk, like to put ideas in his head to talk to him or like try to cultivate trust with him. I know that guy from Kiwi Farms talks to him. Can't remember his name. The guy that helps. Right? Can you imagine being part of like a secret like a secret society that believes all these weird esoteric things, and then just like finding this poor autiste and then filling his head with your nonsense and just having like turning him loose, only to be mocked for believing almost the same exact things as your esoteric group. So a lot of people don't realize this, but the CIA has like a registry list of like every occult organization. And but another thing people don't realize is like whenever the government's pulling some kind of shady thing, you'll notice that like center right news outlets immediately go to um, UFO. We saw a UFO. Some sort of crazy UFO thing is happening to distract from the fact that they're actually invading some other country or doing some other really horrible political things they don't want you to know. So they use similar tactics, and they use like the occult groups as like boogeymen to make people sound crazy when it's not at all crazy once you see it. You're like, oh, this is in every facet of our pop culture. It's there. The alchemy, the esoteric Christianity, the Rosicrucianism. Sometimes it gets conflated with Satanism, and it's not wrong because there are groups that are like a synthesis. They are satanic Christians. They're esoteric satanic Christians. They exist, but they're not like they're more of like a red herring than anything. Hell, most of Yu-Gi-Oh has like occult and esoteric references embedded into it. So, I mean, and it just makes sense. If like, pretty sure Oppenheimer has ties to these groups. And after we dropped the bombs on Japan, when they were trying to recover their economy, it was like post-war economy. A lot of males were dead, a lot of fatherless families, and the only people who really were working or doing anything were all like working for the government, or they were like basically mobsters, right? That's where like male occupations were, and the only uh, once the West came in, they set up masonry as like a fraternal organization, Masonic organizations, and then they set up Rosicrucian organizations that masonry acts as like a filter. You have to get your degrees in masonry, and then you can become a Rosicrucian. That's how it used to work, at least. In America, we got rid of that requisite. You just go straight into being a Rosicrucian. One. So a lot of Japanese games and anime have esoteric Christian and Masonic references, Rosicrucianism, embedded in them. And that's funny because in America, when we saw those products coming in, fundamentalist Christians from like the Midwest were terrified of the imagery that Japan was producing, even though it was a part of their interpretation, internalization of the West's Masonry and esoteric Christianity. The Midwest take on Christianity saw it as satanic and evil. It's funny that coincidentally, the form of Rosicrucianism that we have that's dominant in the United States is technically a satanic Christian version. At least I think it's a coincidence. So, but as far as the Intel community is concerned, they just use these things as like boogeymen to scare people. So the MIs in the UK, the MI5, um, they just use the OTO as like a catch-all boogeyman for bad things happening in a very similar fashion to like to the right U.S. goes, oh look, aliens to distract us while they go do something horrifying in like the Middle East or something. The log. That's just one of many. I mean, it's just all throughout Pokemon. There's a bunch of different references to the. But to be fair, the Rosicrucians are literally stealing most of the world's religions and combining them, and they're taking alchemy, which is a separate thing, onto itself, and introducing that into it. And then there's masonry, which is a whole nother set of things, like rituals and stories and mysteries, and then integrating that as well. So it's like by the time you hit that, you're already kind of playing with this with most of the world's mythos. And anyway,